Hello guys, welcome back or welcome if you're new. It's Christian from Emotions in Wine. So today, as you can see from the title, after a few months back to talk about my iconic wines, but in this case it's not a specific label winery, but it's the appellation, the wine, so Condrieu. What is Condrieu? Maybe many of you don't know. Condrieu is the top expression of white wine from Rhône Valley in South France, southeastern to be precise, and is Viognier 100%. So that particular grape, not the popular, not the common to find. There is the link below to the first video where I spoke an introduction to the grape, if you want all the basics about it. Here I focus on the appellation. What makes it so special? Is quite famous, but even not, because it's a famous appellation. As I said, the best white from the valley, but it's not that known. First of all, because the production is very tiny, because it's not even precise number available as I've seen, between 150 to 100 hectares of vineyards, which is very little. If you follow us, you know our videos about Poship and Gurk in Corchula. There we are talking about 200, 100 hectares. So this is just on the same level, but of course it's French, from a famous region and a famous wine. So imagine, production is really micro. It's very difficult to source it anywhere. Even for me, around Europe, I'm struggling to find. I checked in a couple of markets, and of course, it's almost impossible to find the best. Georges Vernet is for sure the symbol. He's a small, nowadays biodynamic, as I've seen also, making 3 different but tiny production, 100,000 bottles of total of his wines, which are several. So it's very tiny, and they are crazy expensive because he's really the symbol. Only one of his is still affordable relatively. He's a relatively small number, I think few dozens of wineries between farmers and negociants like Gigal, and only a few of the negociants, Gigal, Dela for sure, and I don't know if any other of the big names, I mean negociants, are producing it. Then there is this case that I have here today that I found, that this is less known, more younger negociant. So it's very difficult in every means. So the price, of course, is higher for that reason already, and then for the characteristics of the wine. So Viognier is low yielding, low acidity naturally, tendency to high alcohol, but it needs hot to ripen properly, to show the aromatic. So you need to find the perfect balance. Very difficult. This is a challenge grape for the winemakers. This is one of the reasons we professionals love it, because it's inconsistent. It's very difficult to keep it good standards every year. It's a big job for the winemaker. So both them and us, we love this kind of wines. Of course, for the average drinker who doesn't know all these things, is another story. But if you try Viognier and you found it interesting, sooner or later you need to try a Condrieu. It's a must. Not all are outstanding, because there are a couple of styles, because there is this risk of low acidity, high alcohol. They can be flabby, round, even just in a couple of years. So in those cases, I tried a couple of these. Was not outstanding and not exciting. So there is even that risk. You need to get to know a bit the wineries and their style. But then there is still the risk of the vintage, because if it's a top vintage, even the best one can struggle to make it properly. So what is the key point? The hot there is less than in South Rhône or in Languedoc, which is on the coast, but it's still quite warm. It's a bit more continental because it's further away from the sea. So the cooler nights, I think, more than in the South Rhône, help for the acidity. But the key point is the soil, granite. These steep slopes, as you can maybe understand from the map, near Condrieu village, which is giving the name. This is the northern part of Rhône near Côte-Rôtie, south of Côte-Rôtie, on the west bank of Rhône River. All these steep slopes up to 400 meters, but most is 200-300. granite with a bit of mica schist and just a bit of clay, depending on the location of the slope. All manual, all very tough job, very rocky, so the minerality is intense. So that is also another aspect helping with the acidity on that side of the structure of the wine. So it's key, the soil, beside the rest. And then on top of the natural low yields, majority of the vineyards are very old, 50 or more years, even hundreds in some cases. Georges Vernet, I know, has 50 to 80, 90, but most are very old. So that lowers still the yields and also increases the concentration and the quality of the grapes. So all of this make it really a special place, which even if you are not a fan of Viognier or you never tried it, you should try if you have the capacity to spend a bit. Out of France, the cheapest are about 50 euros. I paid in my market 48, this one. 50, 60, you have a bit of choice of those more available. And the top ones go to 80, 90, 100, 120. Georges Vernet, the top one is above 120. So that's it. But it's something rare. So we make it even more iconic. Someone may argue that there is Hermitage Blanc, more prestigious, is also very important. It's a tiny production also in that case. It's still in the same area, but that is Marsanne and Roussanne, the other two important grapes, which I also love. And anyway, it's not comparable grape because here is only 100% Viognier. So they are two different things. Prices for sure you can find higher for Hermitage. Viognier is much more complicated. So as I said, that is making a big difference. So the one I sourced, Romain de Duvernay, Magnificat Condrieu 2024 vintage, 14 alcohol. So as hinted, this is also a Negociant from 98. I never tried it before. I tried some others, not the very top, unfortunately. So this is one more recent, less famous, working quite well. He's a famous winemaker. Nowadays, he's no owner of the Negos, so the company anymore, but he's still making the wines. Declared they source quality grapes of also many organic, so that is good. So the grape is aromatic. As I explained, it needs all the conditions to express its flavors and aromas, but there is need of full balance. Of course, this minerality of the soil with the old vines, even digging deeper, helps together with the acidity, but in general, the wine cannot be aged too long. It's not a wine for investment, like Burgundy White or others. This has a different story and is to be drunk in a few years. Of course, the cases like Georges Vernet are great wines even several years after, but in general, the best is to drink them in the first couple of years. Also, oak is very difficult for all these problems, but in Condrieu they use it mostly. In this case, I didn't find info actually, but my assumption is there is no oak or maybe just a touch like big casks we used or a touch of cask in a small percentage. The color is typical of Viognier, tend to be quite rich, yellow already turned into gold, clearly. And it's 24, so fresh vintage. Yeah, from the first smell, there is the chance that they use a bit of oak because something may remind of it. But the first impact is fruit and minerality. The mineral footprint, trademark of this style of wine is incredible. If you like mineral wine, this is surely a wine that you want to try. Then you can check even the styles and the vintages to avoid, because the risk of the flabby round ones exists. This is 24, so now is all 1 year and a half. So in model is just less than a year, but after 2, 3, if they are already flabby, means that there is, or maybe even ripe pear fruit, the harvest time, all these kind of things matter. Yeah, it's very typical so far. aromatic, this fruit, the minerality, some floral. Fruit, you go from peaches and stone fruits in general to some cases, some tropical like lychee, things like that. It's not too intense, but it's quite intense. It's elegant, but not super refined, I would say. The complexity so far is quite interesting. So he's a negociant making many wines and from all the main appellations, but they are based in Chateauneuf, so in the southern part. Of course, then is a matter of the deals with the farmers to source the grapes. This is the top line with this bottle and label, where he sources better quality grapes and is making only the top appellations on this line. Still affordable, as I said, is below 50 in my market, so in France it's cheaper. For sure, he's soft pressing and leaving the wine on the fine lees. These informations I was able to find, so enriching it a bit anyway. With the soft pressing could also be that there is a skin contact for a few hours, like in many places nowadays they do, to extract a bit more. But I cannot, the color, but Viognier is tendentially quite rich, so it's not 100%, yes. There is, besides flora, even some herbal or touch of spice, so there is the chance that there is a bit of oak. So quite interesting complexity. Now more delicate fruit also, and more the mineral and these other things. So far, very nice, very nice. All manual labor. All, in this case, I don't know how old the vines, but as I said initially, they are all old. Though if you can see the pictures, I don't want to use because I don't have my own. Steep is a crazy high density of plantation, so 8,000 plants per hectare. So it's really an incredible place. That is another aspect of the specialty of this kind of wine. So the story behind, as I always talk about, that is very relevant when you have the glass in your hand, if you know what is behind it. The minerality, first of all, acidity is still quite good, but of course it's not that high. I guess he may have harvested in the good timing, but the acidity is sustained indeed by the minerality. That is very important. Good depth, staying there. You have this sweet fruit type peach, but not too intense. And then a touch of flowery or herbal hint also. Very pleasant, not super long, so I guess it's not that old vines overall. Giving nice palate with a touch of sweet fruit, but also a bit dry between minerality and acidity. It's a great food match, indeed. Seafood dishes in general, but this can go also with, I would say, even some light meats, chicken, these things for sure. I will keep it for a while in the glass to see how complex it is. It's not an investment wine. It's something that you have to enjoy in the first years. So you cannot compare with white from Burgundy, of course, where there is the evolution, the complexity, the aging, and also the value. So you can say, is it worth to pay these amounts? Of course, it's something we can dispute about. Knowing the kind of style of wine and the story behind, for me, is still worth. Of course, to pay 100 or more is another story. This is a standard one, quite good, I would say, compared to some others I had. Is the precise style that I require. There is a bit more now on this floral and herbs and touch of spice, but less fruit now, which is delicate anyway, so that I also appreciate because sometimes can be a bit too intense. So it's refined overall and coming out even a bit more the mineral on the nose. It's drying up also quite, between the mineral, very persisting actually, and the acidity that is still quite okay. So it's drying up, so you can sip it. You can enjoy this kind of wines even alone, especially after a couple of years, because in some ways tend to round a bit already, but it's drying up, so the mineral acidity is still quite relevant, quite good. The length is good, as I said, and this touch of sweet fruit and the touch of bittery, we can say, from the herbs and floral. Now it's coming out some more ripe fruit. So it's elegant, good complexity, well done, a good, let's say, and a bit easier example compared to others. I would say it's a great good drinking window. So now it's time to drink it. Yeah, dry but starting to round a bit. So it's to drink, not to keep too much. I think another year or so. So it's a standard example of Condrieu. If you can try some of the producers, the farmers, so forget George Vernet, too expensive, but Gangloff or something like that, the name's a bit complicated. Villa, Auger, some other names that I don't remember. So try to look for some of those. For sure are the most interesting without paying too much and without going for the négociant, which are, for me in general, the less interesting. Of course, in Rhône there is a better standard of quality compared to other regions. I think because they are very traditional, so they are serious people. But if you can, try to go for the small producers. That is the most interesting for regions like Condrieu in particular. Yeah, changing a bit more, so it's nice. I think I will enjoy it later on. So it's a nice expression, even this one, of a special and great wine for me. Maybe you didn't see me. Wow is for sure not the top expression, but it's a very good wine. Yes, of course, if costs a bit less is better, indeed. But in these cases, you cannot think about the price. There are the exceptions where you need to think about what is behind and what is inside the glass. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, comment, please. Give me your opinions, even if you drank others, what you think about. See you next time, and salute.